Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on.
And as it is the 16th of July, we are going to be watching Sarah's Key from 2010, directed by Giles Piquet-Benier and starring Kristen Scott Thomas. So to begin with, I would basically have to admit that I had no idea what this movie was. The actual poster didn't look familiar. Looking at the slight little brief introduction about the movie itself that the list that I work off of has, I really had no idea that this movie even existed or the actual, event that it centers around. Now, that being said, like I'd already mentioned, not only does this movie star Kristen Scott Thomas, but also stars Frederick Perot, Michael DeChaussee, Giselle Casados, Xavier Beja, and Milazane Mance. So this is an account of a research by a journalist played by Kristen Scott Thomas into the shameful incidents in French history that intertwines with the story of a 10-year-old Jewish girl played by Milazane Mance from that time period. So this movie does the positioning of not only jumping from present day to the past to tell its linear story, but it also jumps back and forth between languages. We have experience sequences where it is spoken in English and a lot in France, as a good portion of this movie actually takes place in 1942 in France, where this incident of the Jews being rounded up is happening. The modern day story is very enticing as we follow the journalist Julia Jarmond, who is Kristen Scott Thomas, like I said, as she uncovers more and more of this singular story that she comes across while researching the tragic event of the past. Now, obviously, the modern day that we are talking about is 2009 for her, but the incident is back in 1942 for this other story that's being told. And again, we jump back and forth throughout the line. When she encounters someone who reminisces about the events, we then jump back in time, experience it from the character's point of view, and then come back to her trying to piece together pieces of the puzzle while her own life involves quite a dramatic story to begin with as well. So as it is, it's actually on July 16th, 1942, that the Paris police arrest and many of the city's Jewish, including the Starsinski family, which is the little girl's family that we follow, consisting of her mother, her father, and her younger brother. When the police show up to arrest what they're looking for is the father, the daughter, Sarah, places her brother into a cupboard and to hide him away. And that basically is the very opening of the movie. So about a minute into this film that is an hour and 51 minutes long. And as it is the 17th of July, we are going to be watching The Flying Scotsman from 2006, directed by Douglas McKinnon and starring John Lee Miller. So again, we are on the same path of these sports biopics, the underdog stories, which, like I've mentioned before, don't appeal to me. But again, when I brought up the actual poster to see this movie, I definitely know that I have not seen this movie before, but it does have an interesting cast. That being said, not only did I mention that John Lee Miller is in this movie, but it also stars Laura Fraser, Billy Boyd, Brian Cox, Maureen Christie, and Ron Danici. The owner of a struggling bike shop, Graham O'Brien, played by John Lee Miller, winning fame as a racing cyclist. Though his wife, Anne, played by Laura Fraser, and friend Melky, played by Billy Boyd, give him unwavering support. He faces huge obstacles on his quest, his struggle with mental illness, and the lack of sponsorship. Nevertheless, Graham uses a homemade bicycle dubbed Old Faithful, and he sets out to pursue his dream. So like I mentioned, this is one of those sort of struggling sports type storylines that it's very sweet and very heartwarming as well. We have a great cast. I mean, John Lee Miller does a fantastic job as the lead, and both Laura Fraser and Billy Boyd as the hopeful, the supportive people in his life, and also having Brian Cox in the movie as well definitely is kind of cool. I didn't know the history of this story, but the speed records that this gentleman of Graham O'Brien goes about doing, handcrafting his own version of a bike to allow him to get greater speed out of it, and then subsequent squashing of having someone come right along and beat that sort of a record, and his need and his want to continue on, to strive to do better and better. And unfortunately, at a certain point, his mental illness, like it's in the description, comes in and basically rears its head and all that sort of thing. And the movie takes a little bit of a dark sort of term, but eventually, like all these other sports films in this biopic realm of sports films, it turns into a positive ending as he goes on to, accomplish what he has set out through the whole entire movie to accomplish. So after his initial first failure to try and break the record for the distance that he's going on, once the officials are all there and all that, he mentions we still have this arena booked for like a whole day, so I'm gonna come back tomorrow morning and do it, and you guys have to do that. So on the next day, which just happens to be July 17th 1993, and he tries again to sets the record, which is about 46 minutes into this 1 hour and 36 minute movie. And as it is the 18th of July, we are going to be watching Quo Vadis from 1951, directed by Mervyn LeRoy and starring Robert Taylor. So when I looked up this poster and saw the cast that was involved with it and saw a couple of like images from the movie, because I wasn't really sure what this movie was, a lot of it looked kind of familiar. Now, it might have been that I've seen either clips of this movie or obviously pictures and whatnot from it, but it did seem familiar, and the idea of it is very not foreign to me. But to be completely honest, this is probably the first time that I've actually seen this entirety movie for its complete run. There's a chance that I might have seen it on one of those like Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon movies, but probably getting completely chopped up, scenes missing, and with commercial breaks, because again, near 3 hours is going to be longer, even more so than usually a block that they have set aside for a movie on a weekend afternoon. That being said, not only does this movie star Robert Taylor, but it also stars Deborah Kerr, Leo Genn, Peter Ustinov, Patricia Laffin, Finley Curry, Abraham Sophia, Marina Berti, and Buddy Bayer. Returning from a military campaign abroad, General Marcus Viticus, played by Robert Taylor, discovers that a new religion has taken hold in Rome, Christianity. When Viticus encounters Lygra, played by Deborah Kerr, a follower of the strange religion, he quickly becomes smitten and tries to win her affections. Lygra is reluctant due to her different beliefs. Complicating matters in this is the crazed Emperor Nero, played by Peter Ustinov, who blames the Christians for his own burning of Rome, beginning a wave of persecution. So there were scenes that played out that I definitely remember seeing. Now, again, I don't know if I had seen like either a television edited version of this movie or just seen scenes, because there's a lot of really epic sequencing going on. It's the end of the 40s, beginning of the 50s. This is the big epic sort of bombastic movies that we are getting for this time. We're centering around the creation of, or the beginning of, Christianity after the passing of Jesus. This movie taking place about 30 years past that point, but it is very epic in its scale. Again, we're dealing with a movie with thousands of extras and wonderfully huge giant set pieces are built from nothing in the middle of the unused area in California at the time. We're dealing with huge character actors that sometimes seem very stilted in their performances, especially Robert Taylor himself. I find out information a little later on that's his style of acting. That's the way he acted. That's throughout his career, which is understandable. That's what you wanted. That's what you get. But other characters around him seem to work to that level as well. It's very theatrical. It's the parody, it's the actual version that when you're parodying this type of movie is what you do, and it's perfect for him. But a breath of amazement is Peter Ustinov with this over-the-top version of Nero, Emperor Nero, and it's just so heart-swellingly like delightful to watch him playing this character. And he is very playful, very childlike, very temperamental, but so fluid as well, completely opposite to like Robert Taylor's acting and all that. But then we're also dealing with early like blue screen effects. We have this great like chariot chases and whatnot, and then we insert the actor into a blue screened background, which is fascinating to see this early in the process. We have great rear screen projections when we're dealing with this devastating fire that topples an entire city upon its population. We have great miniature working between practical effects and, again, giant sets that are lit on fire as actors are like rushing past it and all that sort of thing. So it's just a wonderment to watch, and a great example of this type of movie that was only made up until a certain point, because certain laws would come into effect, realizing that you can't really put your actors or your cast into such perils as they definitely seem like they are in certain sequences. So at one point, Emperor Nero wants to re-Rome in a new version that he has, and what he does is he basically sets the old Rome on fire, and that fire is early in the mornings of July 18th, 64 AD, which is about an hour and 26 minutes into this 2 hour and 51-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it actually ended up getting nominated for Best Supporting Actor for both Leo Genn and Peter Ustinov, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Music Score, and Best Picture. And as it is the 19th of July, we are going to be watching Lady Jane from 1986, directed by Trevor Nunn and starring Helena Bonham Carter. Now, when I brought up the poster, I was aware of the existence of this movie, but I definitely never have seen it. It was fascinating to see the people involved with this cast and when the movie was actually done, so I definitely was quite intrigued to be watching this movie. And like I already mentioned, not only does this movie star Helena Bonham Carter, but it also stars Carrie Elways, Jane LaPoitre, Patrick Stewart, Sarah Kesselman, and Warren Sayre. Henry VIII has died, and his only heir, the young Edward, played by Warren Sayre, is dying too. Minister John Dunn, played by John Wood, doesn't want the Roman Catholic Princess Mary, played by Jane LaPoitre, to become queen, as that would end the Protestant Reformation. Dudley plots to keep Edward alive long enough for him to name Lady Jane Grey, played by Helena Bonham Carter, as his heir, and also marries Jane to his son, Guilford, played by Carrie Elways. Jane and Guilford soon fall in love, but the kingdom doesn't believe that they should rule. So I'm going to go back to the fact of seeing all of these actors that I know throughout my time of watching movies playing in this movie. A young Carrie Elways and Helena Bonham Carter working together looks fantastic. A very childlike Helena Bonham Carter. Patrick Stewart has always looked the same, which is kind of a fascinating thing to see that this is basically before I even knew who Patrick Stewart was because of Star Trek The Next Generation. But again, his performances keep popping up throughout my time of watching movies, which is always fun to see. Now, this is a sort of more of a kind of a feminist twist on the historical facts. In this, Lady Jane is like a reformist, and that the fact that her and her husband eventually do end up getting along, which is a little bit askewed, but it's still an entertaining movie nonetheless. We're dealing with some fantastic costuming and all that sort of thing, where we start off the movie on a hunt upon the winter grounds as they're chasing after a poor deer and all that sort of thing. but the royals are done up in these wonderful white and beige, like warm outfits as they ride through the snow-covered hills on these horses and whatnot. It's just an elegant look. Carrie Elwes plays this great, charming character who, first of all, doesn't want to be in the situation that he finds himself in, and then eventually turning to enjoying the situation that he is put into from the arrangement of the marriage of the two characters. But again, I mean, that's not top of my list. I'm not very big on the British royalty and all the numbers involved with all the different names. So it was a little bit, wait, who is who? And wait, this is what again? And this is when? But again, it was an entertaining movie nonetheless. So once the king dies, Jane is proclaimed queen. However, she refuses to be a puppet and supports reformist ideas, like I had mentioned earlier. However, shortly after, the council abandons her and she is deposed on July 19th, which is about an hour and 40 minutes into this 2 hour and 22-minute movie. And as it is the 20th of July, we are going to be watching Valkyrie from 2008, directed by Bryan Singer and starring Tom Cruise. So to begin with, I saw this movie on opening weekend when it came out. The idea was intriguing, and the thought going behind it, the cast was definitely something that also stood out, and having Tom Cruise as a lead German character sounded very enticing. That being said, like I mentioned, not only does this movie star Tom Cruise, but it also stars Kenneth Branagh, Bill Nighy, Terrence Stamp, Tom Wilkinson, and David Bammer. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg serves Germany, he's played by Tom Cruise, serves Germany with loyalty and pride, but fears that Hitler will destroy his country if allowed to run unchecked. With time running out for Germany and the rest of Europe, von Stauffenberg joins a group of like-minded, high-ranking men who want to overthrow the Nazi regime from within. With everything he holds dear in the balance, von Stauffenberg becomes the triggerman in a plot to assassinate the evil dictator. So at the time, having the guy who directed The Usual Suspects and the first few X-Men movies teaming up with Tom Cruise and a very strong British cast dealing with the subject matter of the last days of Hitler in World War II was a fantastic idea. And the movie is just that. It's a very nice spectacle. It was a great popcorn film. Well, I myself do not consume popcorn at the theaters. It's that type of movie. It's one where you you know what, you can turn off your brain, watch all the action, listen to the great British actors in German roles doing their best British accents, pulling off all these lines, and have the American voice of Tom Cruise coming through as well. But again, it's really well done. I mean, the costuming is top notch. We got some fantastic stunts. Opening sequences just riddled with some really cool pyrotechnics and explosions and stunt work. Got a lot of fabulous camera work throughout the entire film. And again, you can't say too much about dealing with this stacked cast of fantastic actors as they do their due diligence to pull off this remarkable storytelling feat. Now, it seems a little kind of fantastical at points and whatnot, and of course, it takes a while to adjust to every other German soldier having a British accent except for Tom Cruise, but once you get past that, it's perfectly fine. The movie actually does start off with a voiceover in German of Tom Cruise's voice, and then as he's as he's saying his thoughts, I mean, voiceover style, as he's writing them down in his notebook, it crossfades between him saying the exact same lines in English as the camera closes in on Tom Cruise, and as it pulls back, the rest of the movie is now in German, which is kind of a nice little hook to the movie and all that. But it was, again, I did not mind seeing this movie in the theater. Again, it was a really cool movie to see, but I was there for mostly the acting. Seeing Kenneth Branagh and Bill Nighy and Terrence Stamp and Eddie Izzard and just like a slew of other notable British actors just doing fantastic work. So after Colonel Stauffenberg gets Hitler to actually sign the new orders for the reserve army to seize Berlin on the event of any trouble. It's on July 20th, 1944, when he goes to Wolf's lair and sets off a bomb, which happens just past the 1 hour mark into this 2 hour and 1 minute film. And as it is the 21st of July, we are going to be watching Around the World in 80 Days from 1956, directed by Michael Anderson and starring David Niven. So to begin with, I am not only well aware of the Jules Verne story Around the World in 80 Days, but I have also watched this movie prior. Must have been in, I think, around high school that I would have seen this movie, and I'm pretty sure that I saw it on a regular television, so it probably would have been in a different format than what I saw for this evening. A small handful of times since then, but it actually has been a while watching the movie before watching it for this project. And like I'd already mentioned, not only does this movie star David Niven, but it also stars Canteen Fles, Shirley MacLaine, Robert Newton, John Gielgud, and John Carradine. Victorian-era Englishman Phineas Fogg, played by David Niven, proclaims before his fellow members of a London gentlemen's club that he can circumnavigate the globe in a mere 80 days, further boasting that he will bet the princely sum of £20,000 on the success of his endeavours. With his stalwart manservant, Passepartout, played by Canfatinas, alongside. He goes forth on his adventure, pursued by a dogged police inspector, played by Robert Newton, who suspects Fogg of chicanery. Fantastical version of the story that Jules Verne hath written. Lightness to it. There is quite a bit of comedic, slightly slapstick at times. The movie does seem to stretch out certain sequences, which seem to just go on for being on a film at particular points. The movie is quite a long watch, but it does not seem like it is, because it is such an enjoyment to watch. Now, we follow David Niven throughout this whole entire story. He meets up with the Princess Alda, and she comes along for the rest of the journey. But as we go into different sections, we have classic actors from the era and slightly before popping up in cameo sequences. This movie is just littered with cameos. In one scene alone, we have, not only do we have Marlene Dietrich in it, but we also have Frank Sinatra in it. So, situation we get into. But it's entertaining nonetheless. The movie is very bright. It's very wholesome, to say the least. The travelers actually reach Bombay 21st of July, 1872, and Passepartout gets into some trouble over the sacred cow, which is about an hour and 5 minutes into this 2 hour and 55-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Picture, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Original Musical Score, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It also ended up getting nominated for Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Color, and Best Director. And as it is the 22nd of July, we are going to be watching Exodus from 1960, directed by Otto Preminger and starring Paul Newman. I had always known about this movie, whether or not seeing the poster or seeing it on video shelves or whatever. But the subject matter is, again, according to this list, it is what it is, and this obviously would be the first time watching this movie for me. Now, not only, like I mentioned, does it have Paul Newman starring in this movie, but it also stars Yves Saint Marie, Ralph Richardson, Peter Lawford, Lee J. Cobb, Sal Mino, and Jill Hallworth. So this movie provides the epic, dramatic backstory to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. In the aftermath of World War II, Ari Ben-Kanan, played by Paul Newman, a passionate member of the Jewish paramilitary group Haganah, attempts to transport 600 Jewish refugees on a dangerous voyage from Cyprus to Palestine on a ship named the Exorcist. He faces obstruction from British forces, who will not grant the ship passage to its destination. So this is again one of those political is also wartime. A lot of racial undertones. Well, actually, not even undertones at points in the movie, but it's kind of a bittersweet pill to swallow watching this movie. Not only for the length of the movie, but just the subject matter and what actually knowing that this is true events of how the situation went down. It's weird to see a movie that deals with Jews in a negative light for the non Jews of the movie that are not German. It's kind of difficult to witness British actors playing British soldiers who have the same down look upon the Jewish members that they have in their care, in their imprisonment, and all that. It's just, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it is a very impactful movie. It's just a very difficult movie to have to sit through. And because of it being my first viewing of this movie, I just could do nothing but sit there and watch this movie unfold. The cast is great. I mean, you got Paul Newman as the lead, who it's wonderful to see his acting as he plays both sides, because when he's like surrounded by the British soldiers, he definitely has to put forward the, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but he's really there to help these people to get to a freedom that they so need and deserve. The hardship that everyone goes through in this movie is just such a hitting you in the core sort of situation. It's just something that I hadn't expected be ever witnessing. That being said, I highly doubt there is another rewatch in this movie for me, but knowing that I did get to see it, I am glad that I did. At one point, there is a Jewish King David hotel as part of this storyline, which actually happens on July 22nd, 1946, and that's at 2 hours and 3 hour and 28-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it Best Original Score, and got nominations for Best Supporting Actor for Sal Mineo and Best Cinematography. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off into the future to see what we're going to be watching for tomorrow, and that is going to be the 23rd of July, and that is Patton from 1970. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.